I was just wiping down a sticky table in the back of a rundown coffee shop off Ventura Boulevard when everything changed. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special. The kind of day that blends into the one before it. I was invisible, like always, just the guy with the mop, keeping to himself, until a customer left their phone behind. Just sitting there on the table, screen still lit up, open to a news app. And there it was. My face. My name. A headline that read, "Decorated veteran dies after years of struggle. Family honors his memory." At first, I thought it was some weird coincidence. Maybe someone who looked like me. But then I saw the photo. That was my Army ID picture. That crooked smile. The scar on my chin from Fallujah. There was no mistake. According to the article, I was dead, gone, cremated last month. There had even been a memorial. They said I was deeply loved and missed. I stared at the screen for a long time. Something cold crawled up my spine. Not fear, exactly. More like disbelief so loud it drowned out the whole damn world. No one had called me. No one had searched. They just let me die. Or worse, they made it happen. The words blurred in front of me as a dozen questions hit all at once. Who wrote this? Why? Who even knew where I was? But the truth? I hadn't spoken to anyone in my family for over 5 years. Not since I walked away from everything. Job, house, name, all of it. I left the world behind. And it looks like they took advantage of that. I didn't know what hurt more, that they believed I was dead, or that maybe, just maybe, they preferred it that way. There was a time when disappearing felt like the only way to survive. Not because I was running from the law or anything dramatic like that. Just tired. Tired of trying to be something I wasn't. Tired of coming back from a war and finding out the world moved on without me. You serve your country, then come home to bills, silence, and people who look at you like you're broken furniture shoved in a corner. So I made myself small, quit my job, gave up the apartment, left my ID, my phone, even my name behind. No social media, no forwarding address, just a backpack, a sleeping bag, and a stretch of road that didn't ask questions. And for a while, that was enough. I picked up odd jobs, cleaned bathrooms in gas stations, loaded boxes in warehouses. Nothing glorious, but it was quiet. No expectations, no shame from family members wondering why I hadn't bounced back yet. No one called, no one came looking, and that was okay, or so I thought. Because apparently, while I was out here trying to find peace, someone else was using my silence for something else, something darker. They didn't just move on, they declared me dead, filed a report, forged the paperwork, held a funeral with fake tears and glowing speeches, all while cashing in on an insurance policy I didn't even know still existed. My so-called death wasn't a tragedy to them. It was a financial opportunity. And the worst part? I had vanished so thoroughly that no one even questioned it. Not the insurance company, not the cops, not the system. When you're invisible long enough, people stop checking if you're still breathing. I thought disappearing would give me freedom. But what it gave them was leverage. And now, I wasn't just a ghost. I was a product, a payout. And I knew, right then, I couldn't stay silent anymore. A few days after seeing the obituary, I did something I hadn't done in years. I logged into a public library computer and looked myself up. The search results felt like a punch to the chest. There were photos, flowers, candles arranged in the shape of my name, a slideshow with that same Army ID picture and some old family snapshots. And right in the middle of it all was a video from the service, uploaded by someone I didn't recognize, but clearly invited. I clicked play. There they were, smiling, hugging guests, dressed in black like they gave a damn. Front row, sobbing into tissue paper, giving speeches about how I lost my battle and how much they wished they could have done more. It was theater, Oscar-worthy grief, but behind the tears, not a single moment of truth. I watched my little brother stand up there and call me a hero, talk about how I struggled silently and deserved peace. The same guy who used to roll his eyes every time I mentioned the VA. The same guy who once said, "You should have just stayed over there." He cried on cue. The audience nodded like they knew me, like I was some tragic figure they could mourn, then forget by brunch. And then the camera panned across the church lobby, a donation box, a digital slideshow playing over and over, and a framed certificate, life insurance policy dispersed in loving memory of our son and brother. That's when it hit me. They didn't bury me. They monetized me. My name, my story, my pain, sold to the highest bidder, an insurance company that thought a stack of papers proved I was gone. It wasn't grief that brought them together. It was greed. They used my death to pay their debts, rewrite their sins, and feel like saints while doing it. And all I could think was, if they loved me that much, why did I have to die for them to show it? You'd be surprised how easy it is to die on paper in America. A few forged documents, a doctor willing to sign off, a family member ready to cry on cue, and just like that, you're not a person anymore. You're a payout. I did some digging, quietly. A few old contacts from my army days still owed me favors. Turns out, right after I died, a $500,000 life insurance policy was cashed out in my name. One I didn't even remember existed. It was part of a group plan from a job I held briefly before everything fell apart. I guess my signature had survived longer than my presence ever did. The beneficiary? My younger brother. Same guy who once borrowed a few grand to flip a house and never paid it back. Same guy who thought I'd ruined the family name by going off-grid. Apparently, he'd been paying off high-interest loans for over a year, maxed out every credit card he owned, borrowed from all the wrong people. Then he found the loophole. A ghost brother. No messy confrontation, no begging. Just a few steps. Step 1, report me missing. Step 2, wait long enough. Step 3, declare me legally dead. Step 4, cash the check. And it worked. He didn't need to fake a body. He didn't need to plant evidence. All he had to do was trust that the system wouldn't ask too many questions. And they didn't. To them, a clean death with a grieving family and all the right paperwork was easier to process than a vet who'd vanished without a trace. The world wrote me off. But the real twist? So did my own blood. And now, someone was living off a fortune that was never meant to save them. It was meant to bury me. At first, I wanted to believe it was a desperate act, something done in the heat of panic, a last resort, not a plan. But the deeper I looked, the uglier the truth got. Turns out, this wasn't just about an insurance policy. This was about debt, the kind that eats away at your soul before it touches your credit score. Payday loans, illegal sports betting, high-interest deals with people who don't send reminders. They send threats. He was drowning. Owed over 300 grand to all the wrong names. The kind of people who don't care if you have a family or a future. Only what you're worth on paper. And he had a solution. Not a smart one. Not a moral one. but a profitable one. Because to those lenders, a grieving brother cashing out a policy and settling debts looked like redemption. But to me, it looked like premeditated betrayal. This wasn't a decision made under pressure. It was a strategy. Cold, calculated, months in the making. He didn't try to call me, didn't try to track me down. He knew I'd gone off grid, and instead of wondering if I was alive, he gambled on me staying gone. Funny thing is, I've dodged bullets in war zones, made it through roadside bombs, sleepless nights under enemy fire. But what finally got me killed? A stack of overdue bills, and a man who needed me dead more than he ever needed me alive. I wasn't the brother anymore. I was a number with a dollar sign in front of it. And when that's all you are to someone, it's only a matter of time before they cash you in. I walked into that police station with shaking hands and a folder full of evidence, screenshots, timestamps, even the news article announcing my death. Thought it'd be enough. Thought they'd hear my voice, see my face, and realize something had gone horribly wrong. But the moment I gave them my name, they looked at me like I was the criminal. First question: do you have ID? I didn't. Not since I vanished years ago. Everything I had, driver's license, passport, even my social security card, was tied to the version of me that no longer existed, the one they buried on paper. So I told them the truth, told them about the obituary, the insurance money, the fake funeral, told them my family had faked my death to cash out and pay off their mess. And you know what the officer said? Sounds like a civil matter. A civil matter. Like someone stealing your existence could be handled with a few signatures and a stern conversation. No record, no report, just a polite shrug and a quiet escort out the door. Because when you don't have ID, you're nobody. When your name is attached to a death certificate, you're a ghost walking in daylight. I tried other ways, called the insurance company, emailed a lawyer, even reached out to a local reporter. No one wanted the story. No one could verify I was who I said I was. I was just a guy with no proof and a conspiracy that sounded too insane to be real. But it was real, and if the law wouldn't help me come back to life, I'd have to do it myself, one move at a time, one lie at a time, until I took back the name they stole and made them regret ever thinking I'd stay dead. I hadn't seen her in 6 years, not since the day I walked out without saying goodbye, too broken to explain myself, too proud to ask for help. Back then, she still remembered who I was, still called to check in, still left voicemails telling me to come home, and I never answered. So when I found the address of the nursing home tucked inside an old obituary comment thread, I almost didn't go. Thought maybe it was better to keep the distance. But something pulled me there anyway. It was one of those forgotten facilities tucked behind a strip mall. Yellowing walls, the smell of bleach trying to hide what time never could. The receptionist barely looked up when I said her name, just pointed down the hallway and said, "Room 14, second left." She didn't recognize me when I stepped inside. Her eyes were vacant, tired. Not sad, just somewhere else entirely. Her hands trembled as she fiddled with a worn-out bracelet, the one I gave her on my last birthday home. A nurse told me she'd been diagnosed with early-onset dementia a year after I disappeared. Said the family stopped visiting around the same time. On the nightstand beside her, I noticed a shoebox full of letters, all addressed to me, unopened envelopes, some worn at the edges, others still crisp, each one sealed with a tiny heart in red ink. Her way of saying, "I'm still here. Come home." But none of them ever made it to me. because someone made sure they didn't. They'd isolated her, used her condition to push through signatures, sell off rights, and justify everything that followed. They didn't just erase me, they locked her away with the silence, too. That's when I knew this wasn't just revenge, it was justice for both of us. Justice doesn't knock on your door, it doesn't ride in on flashing lights or wait for the truth to magically win. Sometimes you have to become the thing they fear. So I did what they never expected. I stopped trying to prove I was alive and started acting like someone else entirely. I cashed out what little I had left in a forgotten savings account from my army years, sold the last of my gear, found a lawyer who specialized in financial recovery and didn't ask too many questions, just charged by the hour and promised results. Then I followed the money. The same $500,000 that came from my death had gone straight into patching up unpaid loans, dodging foreclosures, and feeding a debt hole the size of a small planet. But here's the thing about debt in America. If you know how to play the game, you can buy someone's entire life for pennies on the dollar. And that's exactly what I did. I found the lien on his business, quietly purchased it through a shell company, tracked down the rights to the loan on his house, snapped that up too. Didn't even need to show my face. Just paperwork, signatures, and a little cash in the right hands. In less than 6 weeks, I owned everything he thought was his. The office he worked in, mine. The car he drove, technically mine. Even the roof over his head, bought by me. And he had no idea. To him, it probably looked like the banks were circling back, like some investor was cleaning house. He never questioned it, because men like him never expect the person they buried to come back and sit at the other end of the chessboard. I didn't need to show up screaming, waving evidence, or demanding justice. All I had to do was smile and sign the check, because the only thing sweeter than revenge is watching them drown in the same money they used to erase you. The first time I saw my reflection in a suit again, I didn't recognize the man staring back. No beard, no ball cap, no bags under the eyes from sleeping in the back of a broken-down van. Just sharp lines, clean shoes, and a look that said, I belong here. Even if every part of me screamed I didn't. It felt fake, like wearing someone else's skin. But in a world where money talks and grief gets monetized, looking the part is half the war. So I built a new identity from the ground up. New name, new voice. A LinkedIn profile so perfect, it practically glowed. Online articles, headshots, client lists, all fabricated but convincing. I wasn't the forgotten brother anymore. I was an investor, a quiet partner, the guy who slides into meetings with soft leather shoes and a sharper agenda. I even showed up at one of their pitch events, one of those startup-style mixers they throw at overpriced hotels with bad lighting and open bars. He was there, laughing, networking, telling people how he rebuilt from the ashes after a tough year, as if he hadn't set the fire himself. And when he glanced at me across the room, nothing, not a flicker, not a pause. He didn't recognize me, because the version of me he killed no longer existed. That moment should have hurt, should have made me want to scream, punch a wall, tear off the mask. But it didn't. It made me smile. Because now I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't coming back to haunt him as a ghost. I was going to bury him as the man he never saw coming. It all came down to one night. The fundraiser was held at some fancy rooftop venue downtown. Glass walls, skyline view, Overpriced appetizers that looked like art but tasted like air. The kind of place where people clink glasses and talk about changing the world while hiding every sin behind tailored suits. He was headlining the evening, pitching a new business, telling stories of struggle, redemption, and how he turned loss into opportunity. And everyone ate it up. Investors nodded along, inspired. Strangers offered condolences like he carried grief in his bones. But I knew the truth. There was no grief, just profit, and now it was time to end the show. I waited until he stepped off stage, basking in applause. Then I approached the mic. Calm, collected, dressed like every other power player in the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, before you invest another cent, there's something you need to know about your guest of honor tonight. Every head turned. Then I played the first recording, his phone call with a loan broker, discussing the policy tied to my name. Next slide. A scanned copy of the forged death certificate, his signature at the bottom. Then came the emails, the transfer logs, the payout history. All of it projected onto a 30-foot screen behind him. People gasped, murmurs turned to outrage. And he just stood there, frozen, eyes wide, face pale, sweat forming behind his ears. I watched him crumble in real time, not with fists, not with rage, but with receipts. Security didn't even ask questions. They just escorted him out. Investors pulled out on the spot. News outlets got tipped off within hours. And me? I stayed until the end, sipping flat champagne, watching the empire he built on my ashes collapse plank by plank. That night wasn't about revenge. It was about proof. Proof that I had lived, that they'd stolen more than money. They'd stolen my name. And now, the world finally knew it. You'd think, after being exposed, after the lies were laid out in front of the world, there'd be some kind of reckoning. A phone call, a letter, a quiet apology in a dark corner somewhere. But no, nothing. Not a single word. Not a shred of remorse. The only message that came through was from his lawyer, cold, defensive, blaming me for ruining his reputation, as if I had committed the fraud, as if exposing the truth made me the villain in a story he thought he had under control. And the rest of the family? Silent. No one reached out. No one said, "We didn't know." Because the truth is, they did. They just didn't care. They got their share of the money, paid off cars, renovated homes, took trips to places I never even dreamed of while sleeping under bridges. They were all in on it, in one way or another. Maybe not with signatures, but with silence. And that silence spoke louder than anything. There was no attempt to make things right. No justice that came wrapped in an apology. Just legal consequences, frozen accounts, court orders. And even those felt hollow. Because what I really wanted wasn't money, wasn't even revenge. It was acknowledgement, an admission that I mattered, that what they did wasn't just illegal, it was personal. But when people see you as a problem, they don't regret solving it, even if solving it means faking your death and cashing in. So I stopped waiting for apologies, stopped hoping for closure, and I started building something better than forgiveness. I started building freedom. Starting over once is hard. Starting over twice, when the world thinks you're already dead. That's a different kind of quiet. There were no parades, no heroes welcome, no check from the government saying, "Sorry, we let this happen." Just paperwork, court hearings, background checks, and hours spent convincing people I was real. I had to legally prove I was alive. Again. Fingerprints. DNA, testimony, a literal hearing to overturn my death certificate, like I was appealing my own funeral. And when it was all over, I didn't get back my old accounts, didn't get my credit score, didn't get the years they stole. All I got was a manila envelope with a new ID and a warning from the clerk. You'll need to reestablish everything from scratch. So I did. I found a tiny room above a mechanic's garage. Leaky ceiling, one window, the smell of oil and burnt coffee always in the air. I picked up work where I could. Night shifts, side gigs, consulting for people who needed help but didn't ask too many questions. There were days I wanted to disappear again. Days when it felt like everything I rebuilt could crumble with one more blow. But this time, something had changed. I wasn't building a life for anyone else. Not for approval, not for validation. Not to be the good son or the war hero or whatever story they sold to get that insurance check. This time, I was building something mine. Brick by brick, choice by choice. I got a new bank account, a new doctor, a new pair of boots that didn't remind me of sandstorms and silence. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of being seen. I wasn't hiding. I was living, loudly, quietly, messily, whatever the day called for. Because when the people who were supposed to love you tried to bury you, coming back isn't just survival, it's rebellion. Even after the papers were fixed, even after the lies unraveled and the headlines moved on, there were nights when I'd wake up gasping for air, like I was clawing my way out of a coffin no one ever put me in. But somehow I never left. Because once you've been buried, figuratively or otherwise, a part of you never stops wondering, what if they try again? What if the world still prefers me dead? It's a strange thing, being alive when everyone decided you weren't worth the trouble. You start asking questions you never meant to ask. Would they have mourned me if there wasn't money on the line? If I had come home broken instead of gone, would they have helped or hidden me away? And then there's the quieter ache, the knowledge that nobody really missed you, that the silence during those missing years wasn't concern, it was convenience. I've scrolled through old photos more times than I'll admit. Birthdays, holidays, family vacations. I'm there, smiling, alive, part of the frame. And now, I'm a smudge on their history. A chapter they tried to close with forged ink. And yet, I'm still here. There's power in that. But there's pain too. I walk different now. Not out of fear, but out of awareness. I see betrayal in boardrooms, in family dinners, in the way people say I'd never do that until they're offered just enough to prove they would. Sometimes I still hear her voice, my mom's, the version of her before the dementia, before the silence, telling me to come home, telling me to hold on, telling me I matter, even when the world says I don't. And maybe that's the twist no one saw coming. They tried to erase me, tried to write me off like a tax deduction with a heartbeat. But some ghosts don't stay dead. Some ghosts come back, not to haunt, but to rebuild. They thought they could sell me, my name, my memories, my life, all wrapped up in an insurance policy and buried under a pile of lies. But the thing about selling a person is, you can't just erase what they were. You can't buy back the time, the love, the truth that's tucked inside the small moments they thought no one saw. The truth is, when they tried to cash in on me, they didn't just steal money. They stole me. The pieces of myself I thought were lost to time. The stories no one else remembered. The quiet parts of me that made me who I was. But here's the twist. They didn't get it. not the way they thought. Because as I rebuilt my life from the ground up, I realized something. They didn't own me. Not then. Not now. No amount of money could buy back the parts of me they tried to erase. And no apology could fix the years they stole. What I rebuilt wasn't just about starting over. It wasn't about the house, or the job, or the shiny things people think matter. It was about reclaiming everything they thought they could erase. The memories, the dreams, the feeling of breathing freely again. I'm not the same person I was before they sold me off. I'm someone new, someone who owns their past, their name, their story. And no one, not even my family, can take that from me. Not with money, not with lies. Because in the end, I'm still here, and I'm not going anywhere. They wanted a hero. They wanted me to come back and be the guy who fought back, the one who raised hell, took down the system, and left everything in ruins. But here's the thing. There's no glory in what I did. What I did wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about beating the system or showing the world that I had the right to be here. No, what I did was simpler and a lot harder. I refused to let them win. I refused to let them decide my story, my future, or my name. I wasn't a soldier anymore. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a casualty of some cosmic battle. I was just a man who had been buried alive by the people who were supposed to protect him, but who refused to stay dead. And when you've been pushed that far, when they try to strip everything from you, your life, your identity, your future, the only thing you can control is your own survival. I didn't ask for a second chance. I didn't want the spotlight. I just wanted my life back, the life they tried to erase. And maybe that's the real lesson here. You don't need to be a hero to win. You just need to have the guts to keep breathing. The world wants you to be someone you're not. It wants you to fit in, to play nice, to accept what's handed to you. But what I learned is this. Sometimes you have to fight the hardest battle of all, the one inside yourself. And if you're willing to survive that, everything else just falls into place. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who got up when they told me to lie down. And that's all it takes. They say blood is thicker than water. But when blood betrays you, it feels more like acid in your veins. For years, I had convinced myself that they cared, that maybe, someday, the people who buried me would come to their senses, that they'd realize what they'd lost when they cashed in on my death. Maybe they'd apologize. Maybe they'd beg for forgiveness. But that never came. Instead, I watched them move on like it never happened, like I never happened. They kept living their lives, better than ever, taking vacations, buying cars, making deals that they didn't deserve. They never missed a beat. They never called to check in. They never even thought about the years I spent invisible, hiding in plain sight. I wasn't the son anymore. I wasn't the brother they'd forgotten. I was just a man who had been erased, tossed aside like a forgotten file on someone's desk. And here's the thing. They didn't care. They weren't sorry. And they never would be. They weren't my family anymore. They were just people who shared a last name. People who taught me that loyalty doesn't come with blood. It comes with respect. And they had none for me. The hardest part, not the betrayal itself, but the realization that they had already moved on before I even had a chance to prove that I was still alive, that I mattered, that I had the right to be heard. That's the kind of loss that changes you. You don't grieve the family you lost. You grieve the family you thought you had. I sat there, holding the new ID card, And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost. It wasn't just the name printed on the card, it was the fact that I earned it. I fought for it. They thought they could erase me, steal my life, and rewrite my story with lies and money. They thought that if they took everything away, I'd just disappear. But in the end, the only thing they took was my chance to be a pawn in their game. They thought I was broken, but they never realized how hard it is to break something that's already been shattered. I'm still here. I'm still breathing, and I own my name now. It's funny how something so simple, something as basic as an ID card, can mean everything. A name on paper, a number on a sheet. But to me, it's a symbol of something far more powerful. It's the proof that I didn't let them win, that I took back my life, one piece at a time. There's power in being forgotten, too, because when you're invisible, no one sees you coming, and that's when you can rebuild everything you've lost. I'm not the same man I was when they thought I was dead. That man is gone. But the one who came back, he knows his worth. He knows what he's capable of. And he knows that nothing, not even family, can take that from him. My name means something again, and that's more than enough. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever felt like your voice was lost or your story was stolen, let me know in the comments. Your journey matters, and you're not alone. Don't forget to hit that like button if you believe in the power of reclaiming your truth, and subscribe for more stories that hit close to home. Thanks for listening, and remember, you have the power to rewrite your own story.